Ferrari is looking to the future and the wait is almost over. In just a few weeks, we will witness the much-anticipated event announced last February. Of course, we are talking about Lewis Hamilton's debut in red, which will likely take place on a TPC program, namely a testing of previous car from Maranello at the Fiorano home circuit. Such feverish anticipation has not been seen in 30 years, not since Michael Schumacher's debut in the Ferrari 412 T2 on November 16, 1995. Before that, the focus was on Alain Prost, who joined as the reigning world champion. After Sebastian Vettel, the prancing horse will have another multiple world champion in its ranks. Unlike his predecessors, except for the professor, Lewis Hamilton will find a team that has made constant technical progress over the last 2 years and has realistic championship ambitions. Essentially, the historic Maranello team is not seeking a savior to compensate for a lack of technical certainty, as it has in the past. Instead, Lewis Hamilton is expected to be the cherry on top, an added value to a team already capable of winning and fighting for ambitious, victory-focused goals. However, Vasseur has refuted this idea, stating that the extensive high-level experience of the Anglo-Caribbean driver will also be crucial for the 2026 Formula One Championship. According to the French manager, internal competition could also benefit Charles Leclerc. The 7-time Formula One world champion's move to Maranello is a highly significant media event, one that risks overshadowing the historic team's goals for the upcoming campaign. This is the situation's inherent risk. Beyond the arrival of the English champion, the Maranello team must complete its growth curve, aiming to fight for both championship titles until the very end. After all, the historic Italian team boasts one of the grid's fastest drivers, who demonstrated last season the maturity necessary to aim for any goal. This, of course, refers to Charles Leclerc, who, in the second half of last season, scored more points than any of his colleagues, though not without some regrets, such as the unfortunate Singapore weekend. Former Ferrari president Luca Cordero de Montezemolo perfectly summarized the risks and opportunities of the partnership of the century. The Italian described Lewis Hamilton as a phenomenon comparable to Max Verstappen, emphasizing that his arrival at Ferrari was not a marketing strategy, but a clear intention to conclude his career by winning with the Maranello team. The former Ferrari president acknowledged the choice as a risk, noting that they had brought in a champion with a history of significant victories, who joined Ferrari with the same goal. At the same time, the Italian highlighted that Charles Leclerc was performing well, though he had yet to secure a win. Lewis Hamilton is a perfectionist who does not like to leave anything to chance. The 7-time world champion is expected in Maranello to begin his third and final Formula One adventure after his experiences with McLaren, with which he became champion in 2008, and Mercedes, with which he won the titles in 2014, 2015, and then from 2017 to 2020. The Scuderia will do everything possible to make the British driver feel comfortable, especially since Loic Serra, the Maranello team's new technical director recently arrived from Mercedes, knows the needs of the British driver inside out. It's easy to predict that Lewis Hamilton has asked the Ferrari technicians if it is possible to create a steering wheel computer that is as similar as possible to the one he used for many years at Mercedes, having developed an automation of movements for the switches and controls that position the main adjustments in a comfort zone without impacting performance. To provide some historical context, it is worth recalling that Scuderia Ferrari, in the 2008 Formula One season, adopted a sophisticated clutch management system with 2 paddles per side, deemed essential for ensuring lightning-fast starts. McLaren responded to Ferrari with an even more complex solution on the MP422 single-seater, featuring a total of 6 paddles, 3 per side. In addition to the gear lever and clutch paddle, there was a third one used for rapid adjustments to the engine and differential mapping, aiming to simulate a sort of manually controlled traction control. Once the first gear was engaged with the initial paddle, it was possible to modulate power management based on the clutch's engagement point. With the ban on certain electronic aids that allowed semi-automatic starts, McLaren reversed its approach in 2011, focusing on making clutch and gear controls more ergonomic and functional. This took into account the addition of a paddle for KERS activation and the drag reduction system command. Meanwhile, the formerly round steering wheel was flattened at the bottom to enhance leg mobility. In 2012, Lewis Hamilton's final year with McLaren, the activation of the drag reduction system was moved from the steering wheel to the floor of the chassis, so it could be operated by the driver's left foot. This solution, introduced by Ferrari, was adopted by McLaren and Mercedes, but later banned by the International Federation. When Lewis made the sensational move from McLaren to Mercedes in 2013, the British driver asked Mercedes engineers if it was possible to retain the controls he was accustomed to on the W04. He discovered that the solutions previously developed by Michael Schumacher suited his needs far better than those chosen by his teammate, Nico Rosberg. The two had differently colored switches and varied functional arrangements. Lewis opted for a DRS control operable on the rim with his left thumb, while the rear featured 6 paddles, 2 of which controlled the KERS as he had in McLaren. Nico Rosberg, on the other hand, preferred only 4 paddles that were larger and of a different shape. Another key difference between the Mercedes pair was the steering wheel's position relative to their bodies. Lewis Hamilton preferred it a few centimeters closer to his torso than Nico Rosberg did. In 2014, with the W05 single-seater and the introduction of hybrid regulations, many controls changed to adapt the steering wheel to the new requirements of the complex power units. The wheel rim was reshaped with 2 side grips, but lacked the classic circular shape. The digital dashboard was enlarged to facilitate data reading and accommodate a multiplication of available information. At the rear, Nico Rosberg retained gear paddles with downward extensions on both sides and significantly larger clutch paddles. However, compared to the previous year, both drivers reduced the paddles from 6 to 4. An important change was identified during the 2017 winter tests at the Circuit de Catalunya in Barcelona. The FIA had imposed a maximum clutch lever travel of 80 mm to prevent attempts to simulate manual traction control. To regain sensitivity in clutch engagement, Hamilton decided to try a sort of double carbon thimble where 2 fingers could be inserted, enabling very modular clutch engagement at the start, while a spring ensured the lever's quick return to the neutral position. In its latest evolution, Lewis chose a single clutch paddle first tested by Sebastian Vettel, offering greater sensitivity due to a much longer lever. Ferrari adopted this concept, with Kimi Räikkönen and later Charles Leclerc using it, while Carlos Sainz always preferred 2 shorter paddles over 1 long one. It's easy to predict that Lewis Hamilton, upon joining Ferrari, will choose a single paddle clutch control. Ferrari's steering wheel seems significantly more complex than Mercedes. Will Lewis request a simplification of the controls to maintain the functionality he had on the W15, or will he, during simulator work in January, adapt to the systems developed in Maranello? The topic is intriguing, as by January 22nd, the expected debut date at Fiorano with the F175, these uncertainties must be resolved. At most, further detailed modifications can follow.